I don't know. Then again, I'm not
The
sure.
October meeting of the Town of Nags Head Board of Commissioners, please come to order. Let's begin our meeting this morning with a moment of silence, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance Do we have a motion for adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Not all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, like sign. There being none, so ordered. Kevin, you've got 10-year employee this morning.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Mayor and Board of Commissioners. I'm happy to come before you today to recognize Trey Lipscomb for 10 years of service to the Nags Head Police Department. Trey is originally from Portsmouth, Virginia. He graduated from Woodrow Wilson High School and then attended Tidewater Community College, where he studied criminal justice. In 1996, he started with the Chesapeake Sheriff's Office, and in 1999, he graduated from the Commonwealth of Virginia Law Enforcement Officer Certification course. He then went to the Portsmouth, Virginia Police Department in 1999, where he was originally assigned to the Patrol Division and then worked later in investigations in the Narcotics Unit. In August of 2006, he began working with the Nags Head Police Department. He has been a member of our patrol unit. He has handled K-9, and he was assigned to the Narcotics Unit through the Dare County Narcotics Task Force up until April of this year, where he was promoted to Sergeant of the Investigations Unit. Trey, in his free time, enjoys watching his son play college baseball and enjoys spending time with his grandkids. So we're awful happy to have Trey with us and look forward to another 10 years with us.
Trey, we thank you for all you do for us, and we're looking for at least another 10 years. You know
Yes, sir,
that.
I'm hoping.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your work. It's a great job. Great job, Trey.
Chief Zork.
Morning, Mayor, Commissioners. It's a good day. It's my pleasure to recognize firefighter EMT John Wilkinson on his 10th anniversary with the town and on 40 years of public safety experience. He's accompanied by his better half, Shelley, today. And John began his involvement in the fire department in 1975 when he was in high school, and then spent 20 years in Portsmouth, Virginia in public safety, police, and fire. So he's got plenty of emergency services experience. John tells me he has a Bachelor of Science degree in political science and criminal justice. And since landing in Nags Head, though, John has completed certifications for fire inspector, child seat inspector. He is a technical ropes rescuer. And in the absence of the fire captain, he also serves as the acting company officer on the ship. So he has a position of supervision as well within the department. He is equally adept at driving apparatus, pumping water, pulling hose. He's one of the hardest working guys that we have. When bad incidents happen, he's usually there, and that's our joke because, you know, I know that John is going to be there when he's on shift, yeah. But he does approach those tasks with all the professionalism and courage that you can imagine. So, again, he's very dedicated. John is also valuable in another way. John is one of those voices of dissent that without reserve will tell you what's wrong, what to do about it, and how to fix it. And so I appreciate that as the fire chief because he's not afraid to walk through my door and tell me exactly what's up. And I think his captain, Wayne Kidd, can attest to that. Firefighter Wilkinson plays many other versatile roles in town. John is also our stand-in and somewhat long-winded chaplain when it comes to town events. He was involved in 2 proms at the nursing home, and we've seen that he could definitely cut a rug over there, so he's invited back anytime. You may also remember John and his talented girlfriend Shelley with their rendition of the national anthem and the Foo Fighters song at Doug Romali's dedication, and other town events that he sang as well. In his spare time, John enjoys all water sports. He had a list of stuff that was just too much to go over. So anything near the water, he's good with. They enjoy camping, and Shelley and their dog Piper accompany them on their trips all the time. We can all attest that John, also known as Wilkie, is an essential member of the Nags Head team. He can be counted on in stressful situations, and absolutely his knowledge, experience, and skills have had a positive effect in the town. He's earned the admiration and respect of his fellow employees, and I congratulate Firefighter Wilkinson on his 10-year anniversary with the town. Congratulations.
John, we thank you so much for all that you do for the town of Nags Head. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor.
And I did hear that song.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
We really do appreciate your leadership and everything. It's like, keep up the good work.
Okay, Carolyn.
Good morning. Michelle Gray began employment with the town in October 1996. Along with her duties as deputy town clerk, she coordinates the Memorial and Veterans Day events, manages the crowd permit process for all events that take place in the town, and is responsible for distribution of official town documentation and updates the town website. She has 2 sons, 4 grandchildren, and Michelle lives in Manio with her husband Buddy and their 2 standard schnauzers. They enjoy camping and gardening. Michelle has been a very dependable, very loyal employee for the past 20 years. I have very much enjoyed working with her. It's always been a pleasure working with Michelle, and congratulations on 20 years.
Thank you so much for all you do for us.
Thank you.
Michelle, where are the 20 years gone? So you start your 50 years.
We have a proclamation declaring Fire Prevention Week that I'd like to read and then have you approve it. Whereas the town of Nags Head is committed to ensuring the safety of all those living in and visiting the town. And whereas fire is a serious public safety concern and homes are where people are at greatest risk from fire. And whereas working smoke alarms cut the risk of dying in reported home fires in half. And whereas in 1/5 of all homes with smoke alarms, the smoke alarms are not working. And whereas Nags Head first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires through public education. And whereas Nags Head residents are responsive to public education measures and are able to take personal steps to increase their safety from fire in their homes. And whereas the 2016 Fire Prevention Week theme, Don't Wait, Check the Date, replace smoke alarms every 10 years, serves to educate the public about the vital importance of replacing the smoke alarms in their homes at least every 10 years, and to determine the age of their smoke alarms by checking the date of manufacture on the back of the alarms. Therefore, the Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim October 9th through the 15th, 2016, as Fire Prevention Week throughout the town. Further, the entire community is invited to attend the Nags Head Fire Prevention Week Youth Night celebration on Thursday, October 13th, 2016, at the Douglas Romali Fire Station 16, from 5 to 8 p.m. Do we have a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Motion
Second.
made and seconded. Any discussion? Not all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So ordered. At this time, we'll open the floor to public comments. If you'd like to bring an issue to the board that is not on one of the public hearing part of the agenda this morning, you may do so at this time. We would ask that you would hold your comments to no more than 5 minutes, and would ask Mr. Lighty if he would be our timekeeper this morning.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Stephanie Westhyden, and I live at 4209 South Cobb's Way in the South Ridge subdivision. And I'm here today to talk to you about the multi-use path along the bypass. I have submitted a petition with close to 80 signatures of the residents of South Ridge requesting that the next phase of the multi-use path be between Deering Street and Danube. That will connect not only those of us on the west side of the bypass, but will also allow those along the Beach Road and areas east to be able to access the post office, Jockey's Ridge, and the churches that we have on that side of the bypass. It will also connect two Soundside neighborhoods, Old Nags Head Cove and South Ridge. We do have a traffic light with a crosswalk at the Deering Street, but it is not the safest place to pass. When we come to the light there, press the crosswalk, we have cars that are turning out of Deering, mostly from the post office, that are just turning, not really looking to see if there's a pedestrian or a cyclist that's in the crosswalk, and also with the busy gas station across the street. So we feel if we have the path from Deering on the west side of the bypass, that will give us a safer route to access Beach Road, and even if we want to keep going, we can get on Beach Road and get over to Food Lion and other areas south or even north. The residents of South Ridge would like to request that consideration be made for the next phase of the path to be from Deering to the Danube traffic light. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to come this morning? If not, we'll declare public comments closed. Next item is the consent agenda. Do we have a motion on the consent agenda?
Motion to approve is presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Not all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. There being none, so ordered. At this time, we'll have a public hearing to consider a request by Derek Hatchell on behalf of IG Holdings to amend the conditions associated with the car wash. Mr. Lighty, would you conduct that public hearing for us, please?
Yes, sir. At this time, we will begin the public hearing to consider proposed zoning ordinance text amendments to Town Code Section 48-407C9. And this is a matter in which the board sits as a legislative body. And at this time, we'll begin the public hearing with the presentation of the staff's analysis provided by Kelly Wyatt.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners.
Morning, Kelly.
Again, this is a zoning ordinance text amendment request being made by Derek Hatchell to amend the requirements of car washes as a conditional use within the C2 district. Originally, the applicant requested for his text amendment simply to eliminate the requirement that a car wash have an on-site attendant at all times. As that discussion progressed through the planning board, several other concerns were raised, and at that time, staff went ahead and made some revisions to the town code to address those concerns. The Board of Commissioners first heard this request at their August 3rd public hearing. There were some additional questions posed, and it was at that time that this board requested those considerations be taken up by the planning board. So the planning board did discuss those questions that were raised at their September 20th meeting. Suppose maybe the most concise way to go through those questions and how the planning board decided on those would just be to hit those questions briefly and then discuss them. The first question we had was related to setbacks and buffering in consideration of nearby and adjoining residential communities. There was a concern, was the 50-foot setback adequate? Was opaque buffering best for public safety purposes, especially along the front of the property? And can fencing be used in conjunction with landscaping to achieve opaqueness? And at their September 20th meeting, the planning board determined that the original 50-foot setback was adequate. They felt that was consistent with other uses, especially the automobile service stations, which have a 50-foot setback. They required that the opaque planting buffer along the property boundaries only be applied to those property boundaries adjacent to residential uses or residential districts, not along all property boundaries and not along the roadway, not along the right-of-way. The next question that the board posed was to consider the placement of the building on the site, the orientation of the building. And the planning board decided not to specify how the building be orientated onto the site or that it be built to any type of minimum front yard setback. The next question that we had there was a review of traffic flow and access only from US 158. The planning board felt that car washes should have frontage on 158, but not require that they be accessed solely from 158, that we allow there to still be a consideration for the use of a side street as access, noting that sometimes that is more a consideration made by NCDOT as to the curb cut onto 158 and what would be the safest. The next question we had was to define or reword areas of vulnerability. And what we did there was to clarify that the ordinance now states that security cameras shall be installed and positioned to provide video surveillance of the entire site and all operations. The next question we had was to consider the pros and cons of allowing a car wash to be operable 24/7. And the planning board voted 4-2 on that, I believe, to go ahead and allow the car wash to remain open with no restrictions on hours of operation. And then lastly, we were asked to review decibel levels of vacuum cleaners, and we didn't have this for you when the packet went out, unfortunately, but yesterday our code compliance officer did go up to the car wash in Kill Devil Hills with their noise meter, and he was able to pull some readings in and around that, and I don't know if you can put that up on the screen quickly. Yes, that's it. And so,
Just use that mouse up there.
the mouse? The mouse is a pointer? Okay. Well, so the vacuum cleaners are the ovals with the big dots in the middle, and the readings from there, 10 feet from the vacuum, we had 77 decibels. 50 feet from the vacuum, we had 66 decibels. And then the next set of readings that we have was from the hand wand inside of the bay. At 10 feet, that was 71 decibels, and at 50 feet, that was 66 decibels. And then we have the automated portion there where the vehicles go in. At 10 feet from the automated car wash, it was 70 decibels. At 50 feet, 66 decibels. With the dryer running at 10 feet, it was 81 decibels. And with the dryer running at 50 feet, it was 69 decibels. So, being that car washes, as it's written, is proposed only as a conditional use in the C2 district, our noise ordinance not only talks about allowable decibels, but timeframes for which that noise is permitted. So within the C2 district, from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., the maximum decibels is 65 decibels, and that is measured from the property line. It says that is measured at the line of the property for which the sound originates. And then from 11 p.m. at night to 7 a.m. in the morning, that drops down from 65 decibels to 60 decibels. So we don't necessarily have any readings on this property from the property line, and since this is not site-specific, we're unable to gather what that might be in this scenario, but I thought that might be beneficial for your consideration. I believe that was all the questions that this board asked the planning board to consider, so staff did go ahead and revise the ordinance to reflect those discussions by the planning board. Again, condition A, an attendant shall visit and assess the site a minimum of 2 times daily during the hours of operation. Condition B speaks to the security cameras positioned to provide video surveillance of the entire site and operations. Condition C maintains that 50 feet setback from vacuums, air compressors, or other vehicular servicing areas to any residential use. Condition D is unchanged. Condition E speaks to the architectural design of the car wash. It would need to meet some architectural design standards. Condition F speaks to the buffer. This is where we went ahead and said that the opaque buffer would only be necessary on those property lines adjacent to residential uses or a residential district, and that you can use fencing incorporated into that buffer to achieve opaqueness. Condition G, that's unchanged. That speaks to the stormwater management requirements. H is unchanged. I, car washes shall only be located on properties with frontage onto US 158. Again, the planning board opted to not require access from 158. And we went ahead and spelled out in condition J that there is no hours of operation being proposed. Happy to address any questions that you may have. And we have the applicant, Derek Hatchell, in the audience, as well as the engineer, John DeLucia.
All right, are there any questions for Ms. Wyatt? Ms. Cahoon.
Kelly, good morning. It appears that, based on the decibel readings yesterday, that in item C, that 50 feet would not be sufficient to meet the noise ordinance, no matter where it's located. If I'm not, unless I'm reading it wrong.
Let's see. So yeah, the ordinance states that this measurement is measured at or beyond the property line of the property from which the sound originates. For the purpose of measurement, the back of the curb, the outside edges of driveways, fences, hedges, or other physical features commonly associated with property boundaries are presumed to be at a point which is at or beyond the property line. In all cases, the maximum sound pressure level permitted by the zoning district shall be determined on the basis of the zoning district of the property from which the sound is being measured. So you are correct. with the 50 feet taken into consideration, these measurements are coming in at 50 feet, 66 decibels for the vacuums, 66 for the hand wand, and 69 for the dryer with the automated vehicular access. So based upon our readings yesterday, the decibel level is over at the 50-foot mark.
Other questions?
Mayor
Mayor Pro Tem?
I have a couple of questions. Would fencing and shrubbery reduce that decibel level on the adjacent residential property?
I would certainly imagine so. If the reading were taken opposite the landscaping or fencing, I'm sure that would be reduced.
Any idea how much? I mean,
I don't.
Okay.
I apologize.
Okay, and let's see, what was my other question? With the car wash in Caldwell Hills is a little older. Has there been any improvement with current technology regarding what's proposed to be built regarding those noise levels?
I am unsure about the construction that exists there and what Mr. Hatchell might be proposing. That might actually be a question that he or John DeLucia can answer.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Demers.
Hi, Kelly. Previously in the memo, you expressed the staff position on denial or acceptance of this proposal. Subsequently, you've incorporated the planning board recommendations into the ordinance as proposals. What is the staff recommendation at this point in time on this proposal?
Staff still feels like the 50-foot setback is not adequate to mitigate noise concerns, and staff's recommendation would remain denial.
Thank you.
Mayor?
I have just one question. That's on buffering. We talk about buffering on the sides that are adjacent to residential properties. Would we still have our normal buffering along the front of the properties?
We would. That would be the buffer yard C, a
right.
10-foot wide buffer, where we now have some allowances to allow some clustering of landscaping in those areas.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Wyatt? All right, anything else, Kelly?
That's it.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, the applicant may make a presentation in support of this proposed text amendment. Mr. DeLucia?
Good morning. Hope you're all doing well. I hope we're all doing well after the weekend and the storm goes past us. I'm John DeLucia from Albemarle Associates. Derek Hatchell is in the audience with us. We pulled him off of the park project just for a few minutes here, but we'll send him right back there when we're done.
Make sure you do.
Mayor Pro Tem Walters, your question was right on. The car wash in Caldwell Hills was built probably 20 years ago. The technology is older there. There are quieter vacuum units. There are quieter operations within the bays with the equipment that we have today. I'm not really sure how they got 50 feet away from the back of that bay to take a reading because there's a large stormwater basin and a lot of trees. Quite frankly, I wish that the planning staff had called me and I could have been part of that to look at it and confirm. So I say that because there is an ordinance in place. Mr. Hatchell is aware that there's an ordinance in place for noise at night. He has to meet that ordinance. If he does not meet that ordinance, he will be in noncompliance with your decibel and noise ordinance. 40 and 50 decibels is about what our heat pumps put out when they come on, either during the cooling or the heating season. I could attest that some of my neighbors are probably a little bit louder than that. We have a 50-foot setback for service stations. We have a 50-foot setback for a variety of other uses. We even have a 50-foot setback from a kennel to a residential unit, an outdoor kennel run. Now, I can't believe that this car wash is going to affect the neighbors from a noise ordinance with a 50-foot setback. I will tell you that the way I'm envisioning placing the elements on the site, the vacuum cleaners will be much further than 50 feet away from any residential uses on the site that we're looking at right now. I can tell you that right, because that's how we've already kind of laid it out. The planning board was great. We went through those questions that you'd asked them one at a time. We discussed them thoroughly last month, very thoroughly. And we are completely in agreement with the recommendations with the planning board. We think we can bring a nice facility. We know we can bring a nice facility to the town, something that's needed and necessary, and will be a good neighbor to any residential uses that are next door. And I'll be happy to answer any other questions, or if Mr. Hatchell needs to, he can go.
Mr. Mayor?
John, I have a real problem with it being open 24/7, and especially adjacent to residential neighborhoods. Car wash might be fairly quiet, but car washes get to be a hangout, especially with no supervision there, no person on site. So I have a real problem with it being open 24/7. What do you?
Well,
do you have-
let me
do you
tell you
have
a
way
few
to
things
con-
about
Do you
that.
have a way, we'll be talking about this on a conditional use permit, but do you have a way to control that?
It's my understanding, and Derek can probably address this a little bit better, that when you have these types of car washes, if you close them down at night and lower their light levels, you're more apt to get the element that you're concerned about hanging around the place. Or if the lights are on all night, in order to prohibit or preclude that from happening, what happens is people that come in, you'll get people coming in and to use the facility thinking it's open, and then may do vandalism at that point because they're disgruntled. Am I stating that right?
Yeah, we also,
The
like
co-
I say, with the cameras and all the lights, everything we have,
Mr. Hatchell, if you could go to the podium so we can make sure we pick this all up.
as far as being open at night, it's better to have all your staff, and like your staff checks it 2 to 3 times a day, so and in that, but in the same fashion, we keep them well lit, because women won't go in the car washes unless they are well lit. So the lighter we have them, the brighter we have them, the better. Now, if you start shutting me down at night, that means I can't have it lit. I have to shut it down. It's virtually impossible to go out there on all these machines because it's totally automated. Your vacuums are automated, credit cards, the automatics, everything is totally automated. So with that being said, we keep lights, we keep it well lit, and keep it where you can open it. We also, like I'll give you a prime example, Kittery Hills. The officers in Kittery Hills, that's when they use this. That's when they let it go through at night. They wash the cars, they do their vacuum when they're out patrolling around the area. Same thing in Manio. We have the officers over there. We tell them the same thing. We give out coupons. We give things to the officers of the area so that they will use the car washes and they'll keep us maintained and they watch us at night. In the same fashion, we position all of our car washes where that your bays and your sides are always open to the visual, other than the buffered areas and fences. We had to put buffers up in Manio because we tie into a residential neighborhood on one side. Same thing as this piece here. You're only tying into a residential neighborhood on one side, which would be the back. You actually have a go-kart track on one side of you and a filling station on the other side. The only place you'll have a residential area would be in the back. So with it kind of working these areas, putting the shadow box fences up and putting bushes and stuff, and the vacuum, just we can send in a MSD material data sheet for y'all on these vacuums, and they're only 50 decibels. So how they got to 60 might have been, I don't know, but anyway, they're designed to be less than the noise ordinance in Kittery Hills, Manio, and everywhere else in Currituck. Everybody has a 50 decibel reading that you can't be above. So the vacuum cleaners are designed at a 50 decibel, so we know we meet all the criteria. But as far as being up 24 hours a day, it's kind of hard for us to shut it down. I mean, we would better off to stay well lit and stay operational to keep people using it at night with the taxi cabs, the police officers, and people like that, keeping us more visible and more operational. Kind of answer your question?
How about light pollution at night? You go keep these well lit at night and
Y'all have an ordinance that we have to go by.
Adjacent to a residential neighborhood, you'll keep them lit up at night?
Will we keep the adjacent people lit up at night?
No, what I'm saying, you'll have adjacent residential neighborhoods to these car washes, And of course, this is not site-specific now. This is an ordinance and not site-specific.
I understand, but we kind of pick our sites like on bypass 58. Most of the stuff out there on bypass 158 is all commercial zone. You don't have residentials. If they are, they're gonna be behind you. I'm just saying, y'all have a light ordinance that controls the lighting process of where our light and our decimals are on the lights. So it's kind of governed by that too. But most of our lights will be beamed where it comes to the inside the car wash, not going out behind it.
Other questions for Mr. Hatchell? Commissioner Demers?
You mentioned vacuums are rated at 50 decibels now,
Yes, sir.
and that's at what distance?
At 50 feet or
At
less.
50 feet. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Hatchell, or any questions for Mr. DeLucia? Or anything further y'all wish to provide at this time?
Can I?
Yes, sir.
I'll defer.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem?
Is your plan to do fencing and shrubbery on the, on the west side behind it where it's adjacent to residential?
Yes, we'll do a fence all along any residential uses and buffer with some shrubbery on the inside.
Commissioner Ratzenberger?
It's not so much a question, but an observation that this would be all a lot simpler if the MSDs would be in the packet that we get presented to us, so we can, I've been carping about this for a couple of years, not just to you, but others, that, there are pieces of paper that tell us exactly what the rating is.
Well, and in defense of the developers too, we know what the ordinance is and we know what we have to meet. So we don't want to start out with a problem. And too, when you look at it, the gas station next door is open 24/7. In this instance, it's got a vacuum and it's got an air compressor, both right up there. So we have this going on in town in many of the service stations already. And they haven't really been a problem or people complaining about them that I'm aware of. So this will be a good use for town. This will be good for the residents, good for folks that need to keep their cars washed, environmentally more safe than letting people wash their cars in their yards. It's needed. We're losing a lot of local folks going over to Manny or going up to Kill Devil Hills. Be a nice place to be able to take your car and get it washed off when you came off the beach.
Commissioner Cahoon?
My question's for Kelly.
Okay. Kelly, could you return?
Thank you. Point of clarification in paragraph 9C again. It says existing residential use or district. So that means, while this is an ordinance that is applicable townwide, since we are talking somewhat site-specific, it says residential use. So that means if there's residential uses on two sides, you've got to meet that buffering on two sides.
Correct.
So the site I'm thinking about does have residential uses, I think, on two sides.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Wyatt while she's, yes, Commissioner Demers?
Kelly, would you review the time of day decibel standards again?
Sure. So in the C2, between 7 a.m. and 11 p.m., the maximum sound level is 65 decibels. And between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m., the maximum drops down to 60.
And since this is I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
And since it's a conditional use applicable all over town in that district, then we can put specific conditions based on whatever site plans are presented. To mitigate any other factors.
Yes, I think as a conditional use to discuss the buffering or fencing as mitigation would be acceptable. Otherwise, these would be the numbers that would be used and determine compliance. on
Number
the
of curb
existing
cuts
site.
could be a condition as well.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Commissioner Ratzenberger?
And for Ms. Wyatt, again, though, our ordinance on noise is at the property line, not 50 feet.
Correct.
Mayor?
Just one question for Kelly. And since car washes will be approved as conditional use, if we change 9J to car washes shall have specific hours of operation, that would give us a chance to adjust those hours of operation based on where the car wash is going to be located. Is that correct?
Could you repeat that one for me, Mayor?
Just drop, and item 1, 9J, car washes shall not have specified hours of operation, just drop the "not" out of that. Car washes shall have specified hours of operation. Since this is a town-wide ordinance, that would give us, as part of the conditional use permit, a chance to specify hours of operation. Is that legitimate as far as the conditional use permit's concerned?
I would defer to the attorney. I don't know if we could leave that condition sort of open-ended, or if we would need to actually put in there, car washes shall have specified hours of operation as determined upon site plan review and approval.
I understand what you're trying to accomplish. I would rather have a range and give you the authority to impose restrictions within some range of hours. In other words, that car washes may have specified hours of operation limited to between X and X. That would give you better authority to impose that as a condition in response to a CUP application.
The problem I have, and I don't know how to say it, is some car washes will be fine to keep them open 24 hours a day, but if you've got residential's close on 3 sides,
Right.
you might want to limit those to 9 to 9 or something like that. So I don't know how we get that in there other than just leaving it as part of the conditional use permit. We will specify the hours of operation.
Yeah, I think just taking that phrase out altogether may be the better way to do it. But I think that any, and I agree. I think you're right. It's, one that's located on the east side of the bypass, in a purely commercial district, you may not have any reason to impose that. But for other purposes, you may want to do it to mitigate that disturbance.
Yes, since this is a town-wide ordinance, we're not talking a specific site here. That's my concern.
The other way to do it would say that car washes that border a residential district or use shall have specified hours of operation. Because again, I understand what the point is. I don't think it's needed if it's on the east side of the bypass or in certain locations.
Certain locations.
But if it abuts a residential district, that's where I think you have problems or concerns.
Okay.
Other questions for Ms. Wyatt while she's up here? If not, let's see if there's anybody from the public who wishes to comment on this proposed text amendment. If you'll please let us know your name and address your comments to the board.
I'm Molly Harrison. I live at 407 West Lakeside. And I realize we're not talking site-specific for this particular vote, but since the site is in the listings here, it's been brought up, I have concerns about the traffic requirement. And I know it's not totally the board's decision. Maybe DOT has some say in what happens with the way traffic flows in and out of this site. But there was discussion today, I believe, of not even requiring access on 158 at all. And that would be very problematic for Lakeside Street. I would personally like for our neighborhood to see not access onto Lakeside Street at all and just let it only be on 158. I don't know if DOT will allow that, but I think that at least, the very minimum, there needs to be both, because Lakeside Street is already very problematic with traffic coming out of the gas station and turning either right or left onto the bypass, with people coming from several different directions trying to get to the gas station. It's constantly a wreck waiting to happen. We have families in that neighborhood who are trying to get to the beach on their bicycles and on their feet, and it's very difficult. Even if they're walking north or south on the bypass and then trying to cross over, even the traffic just with the gas station is problematic. It's just it just creates constant problems with people pulling out of the gas station, not fully seeing who's coming in from the right or the left or the north or the east or the west. So I just would hope that the town would consider, at the very minimum, requiring access at least onto 158 and Lakeside, and best case scenario, no access onto Lakeside at all. Otherwise, I personally don't see why this business needs to be open 24 hours, but I know that Mr. Hatchell has his reasons. I don't think, the gas station doesn't completely bother us being open 24 hours, although it's not fully operational 24 hours. People can come in and get their gas, and they can vacuum their cars, and I haven't heard neighbors complaining about that specifically. So that, it's not a huge problem for me and my neighbors who are farther down the road. I can't speak for the neighbors who are right there next to the businesses. So I think that's all I have to say.
Any questions for Ms. Harrison? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would anyone else care to comment on this proposed text amendment? If not, is there anything further from the applicant? Mr. DeLucia? Mr. Hatchell? Does the board wish to receive any further information about this or have any other questions for the applicant or Ms. Wyatt? All right, if not, at this time we will conclude the public hearing on this matter, and the board may begin its deliberations on this proposed text amendment.
Any discussion?
Do you want a motion first, or do you want to just discuss?
Discussion, and then we'll have a motion.
Okay.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem?
I support this ordinance as written. I think requiring limited hours of operation could create more problems, particularly with public safety concerns. Just about every gas station, while the interior may not be open, you can still get your gas with a credit card. Everybody doesn't work 9 to 5 or 2 to 10, or you may want your car washed when you get back from a trip at 3 in the morning, or you're leaving for a trip at 5 in the morning. So on that part of the ordinance, I think it's reasonable to allow an automated business to be open 24/7 and maintain the site lit just for public safety concerns. I think a darkened site would be more problematic.
Okay, any other discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Just one comment. With it being a conditional use, I think we have the ability to, because when a site plan comes up, it does become very specific, and I think we have the ability to put conditions upon it at that time.
Commissioner Ratzenberg?
Well, first off, I'm with Mayor Pro Tem. I'd like to thank the applicant staff and the planning staff and planning board for the work they put into it, bringing this thing back. This is good. This is good work. I think the thing is, we got to remember, this is town-wide. So the 158, the sentence that's in here about 158 is to prevent a beach road or buried back in the middle of a neighborhood. And that's not the same as the access, which people seem to be hung up on. There's a difference. We're talking about the location, not the access. And I think access is something covered in the site planning. The same thing with J. I tend to agree with you, Mayor, that it should really be phrased that there will be specified hours of operation in the conditional use permit, not here. We don't know what those are. We could locate this thing out in the middle of nowhere, and we don't care what it happens to it. So I think probably J needs to be tweaked a bit to say that there will be, without getting into what's arranged or anything else, or say may be specified in the conditional use permit or something like that, just to give us the authority to do so. but then let's deal with the site plan. This is a generic thing. So those are my comments. I'm good with it, but I really would like to clean up J.
Could I ask you, may I ask the attorney a question?
Yes, ma'am.
John, when the mayor asked you a question a while ago about J, and then I've heard Commissioner Ratzenberger's, shall is a very prohibitive word. May is deliberative. If we put may instead of shall, would that preclude?
I would, no, it would, I would like that, and when I'm working on some language here, I would like something that was more like, car washes may have specified hours of operation as necessary to minimize interference with residential uses, adjacent residential uses. That way, when you're imposing that as a condition in a CUP application, you have some guidance as to what the purpose of that condition is. And that's why I would like to have some kind of qualification on that. But I think may is the better word, because I think there's certain situations in which you may not need them, and others in which you would.
Commissioner Demers, you have any ideas?
Yeah. I support the comments that have been made by Commissioner Cahoon and Commissioner Ratzenberger about having some latitude in the conditional uses statements when we get to a site plan. I do think that gives the board opportunity to make decisions, and in some cases may make the decision that totally support a 24-hour operation, and in others may not.
Further discussion?
I do think that the points made by the applicant about the fact that we have light ordinances and noise ordinances that apply at certain places, not necessarily 50 feet, and if they do it wrong, they're going to pay for it. So, I mean, it's acknowledged, it's in the planning, and that carries weight.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Does our attorney have some suggested language for J?
Yes, I would, here's what I would propose for J. Car washes may have specified hours of operation as necessary to minimize the impact on any adjacent residential districts or uses. How's that sound?
I'd like to make a motion to approve with that language in J.
Second to that motion.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Not all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Like sign.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, John.
Good luck, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Derek.
Next, we have a public hearing. You could, yes.
Before we go to the next item, Mayor, since my family owns as part of the business, a small cottage court, I would like to be recused from any of that discussion.
We got time specifics going to get ahead of you.
Well, we're going to do this one first.
Okay.
So you need a motion.
Do we have a motion to recuse Commissioner Cahoon from item F2?
So moved.
Whenever it comes
Is there
up.
a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank
We'll
you.
recuse you to the adjacent room.
Okay.
You're going to start now?
Yes.
6 minutes to go.
Okay.
There's a reason for it. Mr. Lady, would you conduct a public hearing on or text amendment for cottage courts?
Yes, sir. At this time, we'll begin the public hearing to consider proposed zoning ordinance text amendments to various provisions of Town Code Chapter 48 to deal with cottage courts. And we'll begin with the staff's analysis presented by Deputy Town Manager and Planning Director Andy Garman.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. This is something that the town has been working on for quite some time. Last year, as you recall, we did adopt some changes to our ordinances related to cottage courts. Since cottage courts had been a non-conforming use for probably 30 years, the board wanted to allow some of the existing cottage court properties to make repairs and do some expansions that they've really been restricted on in the last 30 years. So that change was adopted last year. We've been having meetings with Focus Nags Head and with the board separately on issues such as this. For years now, we've been trying to work to preserve some of our short-stay accommodations. We've lost a lot of hotels in the town. I mean, that's been well documented. And we are starting to see some of the cottage court properties possibly transition. And I think that even though we've adopted ordinances to make hotels less restrictive, we haven't seen many new hotels. And there may be just inherent problems in people doing hotels, especially on the ocean front with camera regulations. It's hard to build a large building like a hotel. And so this is an alternative to a hotel, a cottage court, which would involve small buildings on the site instead of a large building with units with shared walls. And cottage courts were a very popular use historically in the town. The older cottage courts are still popular. People want to see that type of business come back to the town. And it's been documented that we do need more short-stay accommodations, transient guests in particular, places that offer 1 or 2 night stays, not weekly stays or longer. Outer Banks Visitors Bureau, you talk to folks over there, what they say is that these accommodations really are the entry point for people coming to the Outer Banks. For the first-time visitor, a lot of places, they'll stay like this as opposed to a weekly rental. Their second or third visit may be staying in a weekly rental, but a lot of times their first visit is to a hotel or a cottage court or something that operates that way. Also, cottage courts really help expand the shoulder season, which has been a big initiative with the Visitors Bureau, getting people here for events in the off-season. A lot of times, places that offer 1 or 2 night stays really accommodate the people who want to come for those events and not necessarily stay a whole week. So there's multiple goals with this ordinance, bringing back a use that was traditional, extending the shoulder season, providing another alternative to a hotel. So really that's what this is about, is trying to bring back the cottage court as a use and let somebody build a new cottage court that they haven't been able to do in quite some time. Now, I think one of the major concerns historically with the cottage courts back in the 80s when the town disallowed it was that people were coming in and they were cutting up the property. They were condoing out the land under each unit and then selling them individually. So they basically became single-family dwellings on one lot. And, so a way to circumvent the subdivision ordinance would be to do that, and then you just sell all the homes individually. There may have to be an association to take care of the property, but they're not really functioning like hotels. They're just, they could be permanent residences, they could be weekly rentals, whatever, but they're really no different than single-family dwellings. So the goal of this ordinance is to try and create opportunities for a commercial cottage court, one that would function like a hotel to offer stays to transient guests, not necessarily to build 10 homes on one property. So that is a stated goal. Now, the ordinance language is difficult, and I've had some discussions with the town attorney about this to really put in conditions to require that. We've, as recent as yesterday, talked about this and have some other ideas, and then we've also got some things to discuss with you in regards to the ordinance itself that's being presented. But just to go through this quickly, described a little bit of the background on this and where we got these standards from. We're really looking at where cottage courts have existed historically, where we're likely to see these. Really, you're in the area of ocean influence. Places where people want to come stay, they want to be near the ocean, and we also want to make them compatible with what's around them. We certainly don't want a cottage court back in a neighborhood where it's all single-family dwellings, where they're established. We really want it in areas that you've got more of a commercial nature. And so that was really the first point of discussion with the planning board, was where is appropriate for these types of uses. So what we identified was properties that front the beach road, properties that are east of the beach road, and also south Old Oregon Inlet Road. There's the places you've seen these historically. We did put a map in your packet, I believe, that showed where the existing ones were located. So we tried to craft the language according to that map and really allowing them where they exist now or where we most likely to see them in areas that wouldn't cause much disturbance or compatibility issues with surrounding land uses. We also analyzed the characteristics of the existing cottage courts to see, what building types do we really want to see? How do you make this look like a cottage court as we have traditionally seen them? So we do have limitations on the size of these units. You know, we don't want them to be single-family dwellings or permanent residences. We want them to be transient. So, you know, small units between 500 and 2,000 square feet is really where we came out. I think we included some data in the packet on the existing cottage courts and the individual unit sizes, and that's where we derived the limitations on the sizes from that information. We also wanted to allow someone to have another use on the property, which you typically see on a lot of the cottage courts. Someone may decide to build a cottage court, but they also want to have a small business there. And so the ordinance does allow you to do that on the same property as a cottage court. That building is not limited in size like the other cottages, so it's really geared towards what we have now and what we're likely to see. Other basic things in here are property line setbacks, lot coverage. We're going with a commercial coverage. You know, typically for residential uses, the lot coverage is limited to 33%. Here we're going to 55%, which is more in line with our commercial uses. Property line setbacks are fairly minimal for a commercial district. It's really what we have now, 15-foot front yard, 8-foot side yard. We've got a 10-foot building separation requirement between the cottages. The building code will also dictate the separation requirements. So we've put that in there to try and be consistent with the building code. We've got drive aisle. We have parking space requirements, 2 per unit. We have the drive aisle has to be at least 20 feet wide, up to within 150 feet of all sides of the structure. This is consistent with the fire code requirements. As I mentioned, we have tried to put in some language about them being for transient uses. In order for these cottage courts to really be a unit like a cottage court and not a cabin, we have put in something that requires them to have separate sleeping, living, and bathing quarters. You know, the planning board talked about, we don't want little cabins popping up here, you know, that's just one room and, you know, you've got 50 of these on one lot and they're 100 square feet. We really wanted them to look like the older cottage courts. And we also have put in some architectural requirements, and we really are trying to view this as a commercial use. And the town attorney had some concerns about this with regards to the recent statutory changes on regulating architecture on single-family dwellings. However, we are trying to really view this as a commercial use. And I talked to our building inspector before the meeting, and anytime you have more than 2 single-family dwellings on one lot, it's really regulated under the commercial building code at that point. And so there are going to be some things that these folks would have to do in addition to just building a home. You may have sprinkler requirements that come into play once you start talking about a commercial type use. We also went and looked at one of the existing cottage courts in detail just to see how it would fit in with the current language. And I think we included that information in your packet about the sea spray cottages. That seemed to be a very desirable cottage court from an aesthetic standpoint and from a use standpoint. And so we did a little analysis of the site to see if it would meet these newer requirements. And largely we found that it did. I mean, I think there's some maybe slight setback issues. If you're building a new cottage court under the current requirements, it wouldn't be hard to adjust the position of some of these cottages to meet those requirements. We did notice that it was interesting. The drive aisle is 20 feet or greater in width as it comes off the main road, but it narrows down, and that's really consistent with what we've said the fire code requirements are. So we feel like that's being addressed. There is a storage area on the site. You know, we have included language in the ordinance to allow the storage areas to allow someone to live on the property. You know, but the individual cottages that are going to be made available for rental shouldn't have garages. They shouldn't have storage areas. They're not really designed to be residences, but the owner could live on site, and that unit would be different than the rest of the units. So that's also something we built into this. Just looking at a few of the other limitations in here, there's some architectural design requirements. We refer to our residential design guidelines for some of the architectural requirements. You know, one of the things we talked about was, well, how do we want some variety. We don't want all the cottages to look exactly the same. So we did put in something about the stories, you know, being 1.5 or 2 stories, and some of the units had to be at least a single story, just so there's some variation in the style of the units. The minimum lot size we chose was 20,000 square feet, And that was really based on some of the data we had on the existing sites and what a sort of minimum site would need to be in order to do this. And we also put in the language regarding pools. You know, each unit can't have, it's an individual pool, but the property could have a pool that would be more like a community pool. In that situation, it would be considered a commercial pool by the health department, which would be regulated differently. And we feel like if we are trying to make this more of a, for transients, then we don't want these units to have an individual pool, because that just lends itself to becoming more of a single-family dwelling at some point in the future. So a lot of the standards have been written in here to push it in the direction of being a cottage court, like a hotel, and not like a lot of single-family dwellings on one property. Had some discussions with the attorney. Also had some comments from Commissioner Demers about the language in, I believe it's section 48-378 in A, where it talks about location. I think the language in the packet was not consistent with the intent, which was to allow properties to have cottage courts that front on the beach road or on 1243, but we also wanted to allow them east of those roadways. Some of the properties don't have frontage on the roadways, but they're east, and so we wanted to allow that. We have proposed some alternative language to include there, which would basically say, properties have to have frontage on those two roadways, or they can also be east of those two roadways. I have given Carolyn that language yesterday to add here, and I'm sure she could share that with you if you want that specifically, but we would propose to replace the language in A with that new language. Maybe John, our town attorney, could describe some of the concerns that you had, and then we have talked about a way to deal with that for the districts that they're going to be allowed in.
Yeah, the principal concern that I had was the extent to which these structures would be treated as residential structures, because if they are, then under that statute that was amended in last summer, that limits the application of architectural standards and guidelines to residential properties, you would not be able to impose certain requirements, such as the roof pitch requirement that's in here. You also are prohibited under that statute from regulating or mandating the size, number, or types of rooms in a residential structure. Now, I think Andy's done a good job of explaining all of those concerns and all of these issues. And I think what you're really talking about here is something that's really not a residential use. It's not these shouldn't be treated as residential structures. And so, to the extent that you can make this a commercial use and have these things regulated as commercial structures and not as residential structures under the building code, then those concerns don't apply, because you can impose those requirements on residential structures. I'm sorry, on commercial structures. So one of the thoughts that we had was limiting the location of these so that they're not allowed in residential districts, or to make specific changes in the R2 district to specifically allow for cottage courts. Because right now, it's not a permitted use, I don't believe, and we want to make sure that this isn't considered to be an allowed use in a residential district, because, again, we're talking about structures and a use that should be governed by commercial standards. In addition to those concerns and that statutory amendment that limits your authority to impose requirements on residential structures, the other concern I had was the extent to which these are considered residential may limit or prohibit your ability to try to impose requirements that are designed to encourage transient use as opposed to longer-term use. I don't think that the board has authority to impose those kinds of requirements when we're dealing with pure residential structures. Again, the way I look at it is very simple. This is really like a hotel or a motel that's designed to look like a bunch of little residences. I mean, that's exactly what the use is when you get right down to it. And so, to me, the more restrictions or requirements that you impose that are consistent with that type of commercial use, the better it is for purposes of enforcing it. And I think, again, there's a number of issues with this. I think one of the issues that the board needs to consider is whether you want to, number one, make existing cottage courts a conforming use again, as opposed to keeping them as a non-conforming use, which is what they are, and whether you want to allow and encourage new development of cottage courts. I know there's a lot of history to this that predates me, predates probably some of the members of the board, but I understand that there's always been, in the past, there have been some concerns about limiting these particular uses, but I think Andy's done a good job of explaining why there may be some real good reason to try to encourage this type of development again in the town. But I think that's one of the first issues you have to deal with is, do you, as a policy matter, want to encourage these uses and open up this type of use? Also, I think you need to consider whether you want to impose some requirements that go beyond what's already in here, such as requiring on-site management. I know traditionally some cottage courts do have on-site management. If you don't require that, I think that enhances or increases the likelihood that you may have structures that are built and then people try to find ways to individually own them or to condominiumize, I think I said that right, this kind of use. I don't know if you have the ability to prohibit the division of ownership of these. I know that it's been done in the past, that many cottage courts and these types of uses have been condominiumized. And I don't know if there's been an effort to really address that or preclude that, but if that's something that the board wants to consider, then that's something we need to work on. If it's not an issue, if it's not a concern, and the board is prepared to allow for that, then we don't need to address that in this type of text amendment. So those are really the main types of concerns that I had and the things I wanted to point out about where y'all are in this process. So, any questions for Mr. Garman at this time? Commissioner Ratzenberger.
I'll defer to- after all that, minor. Well, maybe this would be an easy one. Okay, 378, whatever it is, the thing, Bow Lakes K, pools. It says they may have a pool, but it doesn't explicitly say you can't have individual pools. So I was curious if we needed to fix that up. I mean, the staff paper that you gave us says that we prohibited individual pools, but no, we haven't. We've allowed a big pool, but we haven't allowed little ones, or disallowed little ones. So I just wondering if we want to fix that. And then the other one I had, you're lost in thought there.
It says they can have one community pool.
K does. Says they may have one community.
May have, but it doesn't, it says you may have one serving the lot. It doesn't say you can't have anything else. It just says you may have one pool serving the lot.
Yeah, what you're saying is, what it should say is something more like, cottage courts may have only one pool designed as a community pool serving the cottage
Right,
court.
we need to clean that up.
I
There is
understand-
no
I understand what you're
specific
saying.
prohibition against that. And the other thing I had is, I don't think it's addressed here. Again, I'm going back to the staff notes in bullet 6. The 6th bullet down, it says you can have one larger structure on the property with other uses. And I understand all that, but is there somewhere in, it's not in this language, but in other language, that would govern the size of that other structure? I mean, can I build a Kmart with 10 little,
No, you're correct. There's no maximum size that has been proposed on that other structure.
I was just
So
curious.
it's
if
something
that-
we would need to consider.
Like I said, I thought mine, and the other thing, I now have a third one. So that was, that one, just simply a question, but the other thing is somewhere in your talk, the architectural design limits this thing to either 1.5 or 1 story. But I thought when you were talking, you said 2 story.
Yeah, I misspoke. It's 1.5
Okay,
or 1.
all right, I just wanted to clear that up. Thank you, Mayor.
And we talked about that at the planning board level, and just looking at the cottage courts that are out there, the smaller cottages, they aren't really 2-story units. They're 1.5 with pitched roofs or 1.
Mayor?
I just wanted to compliment Andy and staff and the planning board for doing a fantastic job on this ordinance. It's really extremely well done. It's got a few little things that need to be cleaned up that have just come up, but I think all in all, you've done a great job of investigating what's here. I would like to see our existing cottage courts be made conforming. I think this might do that to some of them, probably doesn't to some of them. But all in all, I think you've done just a fantastic job, and I want to compliment you and Kelly and the planning department and our planning board for the work that's been done on this. It's really, really great job. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Ditto to what he said. And I wanted to add that the Focus Nags Head Group really has had a great deal of discussion about accommodations within the town. And we had a lengthy and healthy discussion about this. And in addition to the statements Andy made about, transients and wanting just a few days, not a week, all of the data and research shows that this is the kind of accommodations millennials are looking for. They want the smaller accommodation. They don't want to stay with 20 people. Not every family wants to be in a house with 20 people, so this also provides an opportunity for each family unit to still be together, but, if they plan in advance and but still have their together time, but not have to live together every day. So I think this meets a lot of needs for our future, particularly for shorter stays within our community. And I think staff and planning board did a great job, and it sounds like there's just a few cleanup items to get it to where we want it. And I agree with you regarding the making the existing cottage courts conforming.
Commissioner Mears?
Yeah, I think this is a great step forward, or backward if you want to look at it that way. Historically, I think it's really good. I like all the comments that I've heard here. I particularly think we need to do some of the things that, or maybe all of the things that the attorney has laid out for us. And one thing I would like to encourage is that for new development, that we do establish a requirement for on-site management, that is the historical cottage court, not just the condominiumized type.
And that point, Kelly and I have been talking about that quite a bit, and it's something that we may want to discuss a little bit more at some point in time with respect to not only this new ordinance, but some of the existing cottage courts, and then some of the other structures in town, like some of the hotels, because we are seeing a change in the way people are doing business. And so I don't want to name specific, but there are certain businesses that are coming in and managing these properties, and the way they've got it set up is they have staff that come and service the properties, and they make sure that things are taken care of. They handle the reservations and things online, and then I'm sure the units have key codes or whatever it is that they use, but there's not a full-time 24/7 on-site management, but there are people servicing the property. And some of the existing cottage courts that others have come in and bought and then refurbished, they're now being used under that model. And I'm just concerned that if we say 24/7 on-site management, it now would be a deterrent for people to come in and do that. And so, it's just something that we need to think about a little bit, because what we really tried to do was not put things in here that we think would be so much of a deterrent that no one would do it. Mm-hmm. And that's been the problem with the hotels is, there's still certain things in the hotel ordinance that are deterrents. The beach access requirement, that's a major thing for people. And what our hotel ordinance says right now is you have to have beach access, or you have to be within a certain distance of a beach access. Well, that throws out a lot of properties in town, and it's such a major deal for people that it's a deal breaker. And so if we want to encourage people to do these, we have to figure out how far we want to take some of it, and if it's going to really become something that just no one will do it then. And so that's why I just throw that out there. I think the on-site management is something that would really help keep these operating like the traditional cottage stores. It would help them from being condoed out. And so I do see the value in that. I'm just, on the fence about how far to take it and what the language needs to say. I think one of the things that we were talking about before the meeting, because this keeps evolving, is that could we limit the division of property? I mean, when somebody comes in and they take a property with a bunch of homes, they condo out the property underneath the home, and then they sell it out individually. Well, is that considered a subdivision of property or a division of land that we could regulate? And if we say that there can only be one lot, there can't be divisions of lots on the lot, well, then I think if we can legally do that, then that would probably largely take care of the issue. So that's another way to deal with it, something that we may want to explore further. And I think we've got some simple changes we can make today, and then we could come back and do some more work on this too. So the board may be able to take 2 tracks with this. The board may be able to adopt some of this language with some minor changes today, and then come back and maybe do some other tweaks to it, recognizing this is a big ordinance and it's probably not going to be perfect, but it's a good start.
Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem, question?
Just going to say, should we table this until our attorney and staff has time to work through some of these issues, determine the legalities, what's going to work best for,
Certainly
this?
could.
I'd prefer that than trying to do a little bit today and more tomorrow. I think we function better off when we've got the complete thing in front of us to deal with.
Are there any more questions for Mr. Garman at this stage? Yes, Commissioner Demers.
You mentioned on the on-site management, you and Kelly have had discussions on that. Did the planning board get into detailed discussion on that aspect?
Not a whole lot.
Okay.
All right. If there's no further questions for Mr. Garman, anybody from the public who wishes to comment on this? Mr. Cornwell, anything from the planning board that you'd like to share at this time? Okay. All right. Unless there's any other information that the board needs at this time, we will conclude the public hearing on this proposed text amendment, and the board may begin its deliberations, which may include taking action to table this proposal.
Okay, any discussion?
Just going to close out this, at least for now. I mean, this is a great leap forward to something we really want to do. And I guess my thought is that we really want to do this, and let's do it right the first time. And so I'm willing to support Mayor Pro Tem's suggestion that we table it till it gets cleaned up.
I would like to make a motion that we table it until mid-month or November.
I'd say November. Probably won't have a mid-month.
Okay.
Should we give the planning board the opportunity to revisit along with us on this, or do we need to move it
I
along?
think it's probably most legalese that has to go into it. We can ask Andy. What do you think?
Well, if we do get into coming up with some, like the issue I was just describing with the division of property, and we add language that speaks to that, do you think that's a substantive enough change that it would need to go back to the planning board?
It may. That may be substantive enough.
I'd like their input anyway.
Right.
And I'd rather not rush it for mid-month or even November. If we can do this in an organized manner. They do have other work. The planning board and all them do have other work. Yeah, they do. So, I mean, let's put this in the queue such that it can be addressed properly, is my recommendation.
Okay, well, I'd like to withdraw my motion and make it for the December meeting.
All right, good, sounds good. to me.
All right.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion on that motion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Andy, we thank you so much.
All right,
Get
great
this
job.
little language cleaned up. I think we've got a great ordinance there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Great job.
This time we've got a time-specific survey, the report that needs to be heard. Before we do that, I'd ask to be excused from the meeting at 10:30 so I can go attend a county control group meeting. And I will return later. I think I need a motion to be formally excused.
Second.
Motion by Okay, and all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It's 4-0. Okay, David,
We have-
don't want to be rude to leave, but at 10:30 I need to leave, so.
Understandable.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Board of Commissioners. Each June, the town conducts a survey of the sand amount from the 2011 Beach Nourishment Project and in accordance with the Beach Monitoring and Maintenance Plan. Here to present the 2016 survey results is Dr. Heiching Kiskowski of Coastal Science and Engineering. And I just wanted to note before she comes up here that a full copy of the report for the 2016 results will be made available on our town's website under the Shoreline Management tab. Right now, we have an executive summary that is currently posted on that section with the preliminary results from the survey. So at this time, I'll bring up Dr. Kiskowski.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I'm glad to be here and to see a lot of you again. If you ask somebody who lives here about the beach condition, depending on what that person do, whether he is a fisherman, a surfer, a beachgoer, a business owner, a realtor, an oceanfront property owner at North Nags Head or at South Nags Head, probably that person can give you a story from his own perspective. But today, I'm going to give you some scientific numbers and a scientific report to confirm what some of you have already observed on the beach, and to help you answer the questions about the portion of beach and the water that you cannot see. And hopefully, the report and summary will deepen your understanding of beach condition and beach nourishment project. Here is an outline of the presentation. There are two photos on the bottom of the slide. On the left one, it was taken at the Town Hall Beach access, across the street of this building. And the photo on the right, it was taken near McCall Court at the very south end of Nags Head. So the key word of Nags Head beach condition is variation. You can see from the north to south, the dune structure and the beach width. It vary very much. Here is a review of the project monitoring. Like Mr. Ryan has already listed the scope of work we did since project completion. And the major work is the annual beach condition survey. And as you know, this survey is required by the state and federal permits, and also it is a prerequisite for FEMA's post-storm beach restoration funding. We set up survey stations along this 10-mile beach. Every survey station's distance between two survey stations is 500 feet. So at one survey station, we survey the beach perpendicular to the shoreline. So the intervals between 2 points on along one profile is about 2 feet. So one profile probably will have approximately 2,000 points from the landward back of the dune all the way to deep water, about 4,000 feet offshore. So 2,000 points along each profile. And together, Nags Head has 106 profiles, and plus the 1 mile north of the project site and 1 mile south of the project that we survey. So each year, we have about 200,000 survey points. And we divided Nags Head into 4 reaches. And reach 1 encompasses 5.8 miles from Burnett Street beach access to Governor Street. And reach 2 is from Governor Street to James Street. Reach 3 is from James Street to Torrance Street. Starting from this year, we further divided Reach 3 into 2 sub-reaches in order to distinguish the variation, the erosion variation in Reach 3. And Reach 4 is a very short station. It's about 1,400 feet. It's a taper station we used in the 2011 Nourishment Project. And here is an aerial photo to show where we break these sub-reaches in Reach 1. The south 1/3 of Reach 3 is about 3,500 feet. Now we call it Reach 3 South. And together with Reach 4, and this area is an erosion hotspot that was discovered over the past 5 years. And I want to go back to this slide to show that how we evaluate the results. We look at each profile through 3 lenses. The first lens is a full dune area. Second lens is the beach that we use for recreation. And the third lens covers the underwater portion of the beach from the low tide wading depth to -19 feet NAVD. NAVD is a vertical stratum. It's about the mean sea level. This -19 feet was determined by FEMA. And if you have any post-storm reimbursement requestment, they will calculate the sand from the landward back of the dune all the way to -19 feet in AVD. And we call this a littoral sandbox. This sandbox, if you extend it to 10 miles along Nags Head, and this will be a 3-dimensional sandbox. And during the 2011 Beach Nourishment Project, 4.6 million cubic yards of sand was placed in this sandbox. And each year after our survey, we will calculate how much sand remained in this sandbox compared to the 4.6 million cubic yards. We look at the results in different ways. First, we look at the results by station along Nags Head. Then we can discover the variation from station to station and from north to south. And then we group the stations into reach and the sub-reaches. So we look at the volumes by reach and sub-reach. And here specifically, we look at the volume in the dune area. So we discover the dune growth rate along Nags Head. And related to dune growth is the beach width. So we will show you the results for this 1 mile average of beach width. These results will be compared to pre-nourishment condition to previous years, and also they will be compared to historical analysis. First, we look at the sand volumes by station along Nags Head. The red line represents a pre-nourishment condition in November 2010. The black line represents the most recent survey results in June 2016. If you see the black line is higher, is above the red line, that means there is a volume increase since project completion or compared to the pre-project condition. You can tell most of the areas, they have more volume this year compared to 2010. On the average, there's an increase of 79 cubic yards per foot. If you multiply this unit volume increase by the 10-mile Nags Head Beach, you will yield the total volume gain it will be 4.17 million cubic yard per cubic yard, compared to the 4.6 million cubic yard that was placed along Nags Head. So this 4.17 is equivalent to 90% of the nourishment sand. So in other words, 5 years after project completion, Nags Head has lost 10% of the nourishment sand. Despite the variations from station to station, we draw the trend line. The trend lines. The black line represents the best fit of the trend of the data in 2016, and the red line, the same idea, to represent the trend line for the 2010 data. And you see the overall increase of the volume is very obvious. Again, this volume is calculated from the face of the dune to negative 19 feet NAVD, which is the total volume in that sandbox. Next slide has lots of information. It shows the total volume by ridge and by sub-ridge. If there's only one slide you want to print or save from this presentation, this is the slide. Each color represents a different survey date. So we have 8 different survey dates showing on this plot. And each ridge has the same color theme. Let's use the ridge 1 as an example. The very left bar shows the volume that was placed by the contractor during the construction. That's the first bar on the left. And the second bar represents the volume that was confirmed by CSE after the project was completed. And the next 2 bars represent the first year results, and then second year, third year, fourth year. And the last one on the right is the result from the most recent survey in June 2016. If you compare this bar to the very next bar, that means this year over last year. So here is the results. Ridge 1 and Ridge 2 gain sand. Ridge 3 and Ridge 4 lost sand compared to the previous year. And overall, Nags Head gained 6% of the volume that was placed, which is equivalent to 250,000 cubic yard. So that was the volume gain over the past year. If you compare the bar on the right with the second bar, so that is a comparison between the present condition and the condition right after project completion. So we use that to calculate the nourishment sand remaining. Here is the results. I circled this group of results. Ridge 1 gains sand 20%. Ridge 2 remains stable. At Ridge 3, especially the south 1/3 of Ridge 3 lost significant amount of sand. At Ridge 4 lost 90% of the nourishment sand. Again, Ridge 4 is the last ridge. We use it as a taper during the construction. It's only 1,500 feet long. You see all the bars are above 0. That means everywhere Nags Head, every ridge and sub-ridge has more sand compared to pre-nourishment condition. But Ridge 4, if you can see that this bar is very close to 0. That means the present condition has already almost returned to the pre-project condition. If this erosion trend continues, so we may see some bars will go down below 0, which means the condition would be worse than the pre-nourishment condition, volume-wise. So we reiterate these results on this slide to show that this 20% of gain in Ridge 1 is equivalent to 390,000 cubic yard. At Ridge 2, again, remains stable. At Ridge 3 and 4, lost a significant amount of sand and have much higher erosion rate compared to the overall Nags Head erosion rate. I apologize for this different format between my computer and the computer used here. That if you can see this number, 680,000 cubic yard. This is the total volume lost in Ridges 3 and 4 in these past 5 years. 380,000 cubic yard. When we compare the results to historical analysis, we will see the erosion rate that we adopted in our design and where we were and what the actual erosion rate after this 5 years. First, this 900,000 cubic yard per year, I'm sorry, not per foot, just per year along Nags Head. That was the annual erosion rate estimated by USACE in 2000. In that year, the Army Corps conducted a feasibility study of a possible nourishment project at Bodie Island. In that study, this is the erosion rate they estimate. So their conclusion is that the erosion rate is too high and the project will be too expensive. So they came up with this number because they assume Nags Head had an erosion rate as high as South Nags Head along this 10-mile beach. So later on, we know that that is not true. Also, on top of that overestimation, they add a safety factor. So that's why they came up with a very high erosion rate. So they did a study in 2000, and in 2005, CSE collected a comprehensive data set, and that was the second data set available for Nags Head, in addition to this 1994 data set. And after other literature research, we discovered that Nags Head erosion rate should be around 275,000 cubic yard. And by the year 2010, we finalized the nourishment design. We adopted this number in our design. Since project completion, after annual survey, we find in the past 5 years, the actual annual erosion rates have varied. The maximum erosion rate was as high as 500,000 cubic yard per year. This occurred between 2012 and 2013. If you recall, there was a superstorm in October 2012, so that contributed to this high erosion. But 1 year in this past 5 years, Nags Head didn't lose any sand, but you had more sand. This occurred over this past year, and Nags Head had 250,000 cubic yard. So on the average, you have gained in 1 year, you lost sand in the other 4 years. The average change rate is an erosion at 100,000 cubic yard per year. I highlight these 3 numbers. You see from 900,000 to 275,000 to 100,000 cubic yard per year. The reason we did this analysis because we're moving forward for the short-term plan and long-term plan. And so what is a reasonable, a realistic erosion rate that we should adopt in our design for renourishment project is still under determined. So we will do more research on this and adopt a more realistic erosion rate. This slide shows the beach width by 1 mile average. This beach width, the definition is between the toe of the dune at 10 foot NAVD to plus 5 foot NAVD. The plus 5 is about the seaward end of the dry berm. So this area is actually the unvegetated beach. So the width of this section of beach is very important for dune growth because that's the distance where sand and where wind can travel and pick up sand and deposit on the dune. In 2010, it shows how narrow the beach was along Nags Head. And after the nourishment, you see the much wider beach in South Nags Head and also around the Genesee Pier. And 2016 data shows a narrow beach width compared to the previous year along North Nags Head. And part of the reason is because the beach berm is continuing to adjust, and the dune has been widened and grows seaward, and the beach elevation has been higher. So that combination fact caused a seaward shift of this dry beach. That's why we see a narrow overall along Nags Head. The next few slides we will focus on the first lens of this profile, which is the dune area. The same waviness as one of the previous slides, and it shows from north to south the volume in the dune from station to station. Again, the red line represents the pre-nourishment condition, and the black line represents the most recent condition. And the distance between these two trend lines shows the average increase of the volume in the dune. Compared to the pre-nourishment condition, Nags Head has gained about 19.5 cubic yard per foot. Again, if you multiply this number by the 10-mile beach, you will equivalent about 1 million cubic yard, which means compared to the pre-project condition, Nags Head has over 1 million cubic yard in the dune area. And this portion of the beach, it has proved its worth in the storms. And that's what protects the properties and infrastructure behind the shoreline. But Nags Head dune hasn't behaved always like that. This plot shows the dune behavior before and after nourishment project. And this point is a turning point. So from this point to the left, that is before nourishment, Nags Head lost about 1 cubic yard per foot per year in the dune area. And from this point to the right, this is after nourishment, Nags Head has gained 3 to 4 cubic yard per foot per year. But you see the gaining rate has slowed down in the recent years because the dry beach has been narrow. Again, this gain is equivalent to over 1 million cubic yard of sand in the dune area. Here is a series of photos we took every year at the same location. This is the year after nourishment. Almost no dune, and sandbags were still exposed. And 2 years after the first photo was taken, you see that the sandbags were almost buried, and the incipient dune has already formed on top of the sand fencing. And this is a year after that, and this is the most recent year. You can see the dune has grown. And the sand fencing, the first row was buried here, and the second row of sand fencing was placed. And now the second row of sand fencing was almost buried. and you can also see the vegetation on top of the dune. This photo was taken at a location about 2,000 feet north of Outer Banks Pier. It is south of Tice Drive. Similar dune growth is occurring at other places along Nags Head. But whether this dune growth will continue in the next few years, whether this small, incipient dune will continue to grow and become an established dune, we don't know yet. If Nags Head doesn't receive any renourishment sand, probably this dune will not continue to grow because the waves will check the dune frequently and stop and will prevent the dune to grow. Here is the last slide, the 5-year summary. Overall, Nags Head lost only 10% of the nourishment sand. Reach 1, which represents the north 5.8 miles of Nags Head, gained this much sand. At Reach 2, which is the middle to south 2.4 miles of Nags Head, remains stable. And the two south reaches 3 and 4, which encompass 1.8 miles of South Nags Head, lost approximately 680,000 cubic yards. So this is a summary of the volume gain and the loss. In general, what nourishment can do is pretty obvious. Nourishment can provide a wide beach, and nourishment provides a new source for natural dune growth. Wide beach, higher dune, so it leads to less damage. So nourishment can reduce damage under storms. That's what nourishment in general can do. But what nourishment cannot do in general, especially at Nags Head, nourishment cannot stop chronic erosion. Even the erosion rate in the past 5 years is lower than what we estimate historically, but still the pattern is Nags Head is an eroding beach. So nourishment cannot stop this chronic erosion. Second, nourishment cannot reduce the high erosion rate in South Nags Head. And the third, nourishment cannot control the sand movement, the wind-generated sand movement, and where the sand will deposit. The reason we summarize what nourishment can do and nourishment cannot do is that when we move forward, we want the nourishment to continue to do what it is good at. For nourishment cannot do, we will think about combining another solution as a supplementary solution for this nourishment to get better results. So when we move forward, at least 2 goals and purposes will be included in the next renourishment design. I know Commissioner Reisenberger will give you a brief report on that, but I just want to point 2 goals and a purpose in this next renourishment design. First is to adequately address South Nags Head's erosion issue. Second, to integrate dune management plan into the renourishment design. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Hai-Ching.
Anybody got any questions for Dr.?
I do. Hai-Ching, thank you. Very good presentation. On the slide that had the 4 pictures on it of the house in South Nags Head, they were all taken from different perspectives, so it was kind of hard for me to totally focus it in, because in 2015 you could delineate the house behind totally, and it just didn't quite follow the frame, so it would have been easier to, if we could lay one on top of the other to see how it worked, but that would require taking it from the same frame of reference each time in order to explain it a little bit better.
I was a photographer for all these photos. I was trying to take a bunch of photos, try to duplicate what I did last year or 2 years ago. It just surprisingly, and it's not identical. It's hard to take pictures from the same perspective. Maybe next time we will put a stake. Yeah.
Or put a GPS point. If
Yeah,
you do a GPS
or
point.
the angle of the camera
Yeah.
is
Pokemon
very
character.
important. But the most important thing I want to show from this series of photos, probably we will continue to do this in the next few years or forever, and it's the dune growth. You see, it's a flat, no dune. Sandbags were exposed, sand fencing was so close to the house. And then you see the relative distance between the sand fencing, because the first row of sand fencing probably was buried. So the dune grows, and dune further grows and wider, taller. And then we have the vegetation. So that's the main ideas we want to show from this series of photos.
Any other questions?
I'd like to make just one point on your very last slide. Could you scroll that up, Roberta, so that the bottom can be seen easier? Maybe not. Anyhow, it's that next to last bullet that talks about the South Nags Head erosion issue. I would just like to point out that Reach 2 is completely within South Nags Head. If you look at South Nags Head starting at Whalebone Junction and moving south, and Reach 2 has been very stable. So that statement really addresses the extreme South Nags Head issue, not the entire South Nags Head.
Thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions?
One more. As we move forward, I like seeing integrate dune management plan, and that is a dune management plan on the public beach, the Nourish Beach, east of the static vegetation line. Is that?
Yeah, that includes an initial dune construction for the renourishment project, and also includes the sand fencing and the vegetation after nourishment project. So that's the basic major work for the dune management plan.
Any other questions?
No, I'm going to close out, though, if you all got your questions.
Okay.
For the last, starting from in April, we've had a committee of anywhere from 12 to 16 people meeting to talk about where we go from here. And one of my members, Bill McGann, is here with us today, and I'm hoping some others are on the live video. First thing I want to point out is, even though this is a report on the previous project, you'll note that we have transitioned, well, this thing is already transitioning to the future because we've changed some of our references, we've changed some of the things we're trying to do and set ourselves up for the future. And we started with, and this is a good slide to keep here, we started with trying to define a target beach as to what we think we might want, and we're still working at that. So the high level is protection and storm damage reduction, and reach the 3 south and 4. Thank you. That's a good point you made there, Marvin, on that. We're going to fix that up. A wider recreational beach for a couple reasons. First off, that's how we build the dunes, is with a wide beach, and we've got to get that. But then again, how much is too wide? You know, and so we're addressing that in the whole specification. Definitely on the last bullet here, integrating dune management. Now we're going to integrate it in if we do a 2018 project. This will be first. This will be on our list of things to do as part of the project. If you go back to 2011, there's nothing in that project at all that had dune management in it anywhere. And it took us a few years. The reason that the beach width, this thing that you all saw, The reason it starts at 2014 is that's when we've really tried to address in the town the problems that have been caused because the first couple, 3 years. And that's when we started putting the programs in place. And we actually had CSE doing the measurements so we could start looking at this. So that's part of it. And, you know, we want to replenish our own sandbox, keeping it going and building up for protection in the future, using now with some better, perhaps better erosion calculations than what we had before. We now have real data over a period of time about us. So basically, we're looking at, we're at the point now of having talked through many of these numbers with CSE, and we'll be looking at project design alternatives for 2018. At the same time, we've realized that we've gone far enough that we can start to transition to the 30-year plan. And so we're starting about that. And also, we've begun to talk about an education plan for public buy-in of what we're doing, both short-term and long-term, so they understand as much as we understand. I think the folks on the committee could probably agree that in the last 4 or 5 months, they've learned a tremendous amount about beach nourishment and that. So we want to capture that and have that as, you know, for the folks in the town. And we do have everything we've done in most all of our presentations. If you go to the town website, in the top left corner, there's a Shoreline Management Committee tab out there, and you can click on that and you can have all the information you want. And if you don't have it there, call me and we'll see what we can find and get it out there for you. We intend to just load that thing up. So I want to thank CSE and Dr. Kozgowski for the presentation and everything, and this is kind of where we're going. And if there's any comments or thoughts, and I do appreciate what you said there, Marvin, on the South Nags, use of throwing the word South Nags Head around too liberally.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Just a comment. I think this is a great presentation reflecting great accomplishment in the initial project. We're learning, we have more data, we can do even better in the future. That's what I think we're all pointing toward.
Thank you, Dr. Kaskowski, and thank you, Commissioner Ratzenberger.
Oh.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Break?
Okay, we'll take a little 10-minute break. Thank you. Okay, everybody, call the meeting back to order. The next item on the agenda is the reports and recommendation from the Planning Director and the Planning Board Chair.
Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners, good morning.
Good morning.
We addressed 2 actions at our September meeting. The first we've already dealt with, and that was your request to revisit the 7 conditions associated with the car wash. And just to piggyback on a comment made by Commissioner Ratzenberger, message received regarding things that need to be in that packet, and something that we've tried to deal with, although in many cases a lot of that would be dealt with under the conditional use application as well. But I know what you're looking for, and we'll try to make sure it's available. The second item was the request from the Outer Banks Hospital to create a new use of detached medical office on its current site. Specifically, the request is to amend the town code to allow buildings for outpatient services as an accessory use in the SF4 zoning district. And included in that request is the reduction of the setback from 100 feet to 50 feet. 100 feet is the current requirement for the hospital. Now, currently the town code sets forth that 100-foot setback for the hospital buildings adjacent to any residential use. The proposed site for this medical office is the northeast corner of their current site, which is now parking, part of the parking lot. Now, the request to reduce it to 50 feet for the proposed building is really no different than current medical offices in the C2 district, general commercial, and in the village commercial 1 districts. So it was the opinion of the planning board and staff that this particular request would be in conjunction with or similar to other medical offices in Nags Head, and so we approved it unanimously. And that's all. That was our action items. Any questions for me?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Excellent job you guys did on the cottage courts and all that stuff.
Do we have any reports from the planning director?
Well, I know Dave Ryan has a presentation on Dowdy Park that he just wanted to give you a brief update on. From my standpoint, Focus Nags Head, the only thing that we had talked at the board's retreat about doing a poll and trying to schedule dates that would work for most people. The results of that, so far, we've got 12 responses, and I think January 12th was the best date that we came up with for the majority of people. So just throwing that out there. There were some other dates where had close to that many people that could come, but I can send the board the entire set of results, but I don't know if we're ready to set a date at this meeting. But the 12th is a Thursday, and I believe that was the best date for everybody that responded.
For a joint workshop?
That's right.
And was that 2 days or just one full day?
I think that we were just getting clarification on the date and not whether it would be a whole day or a half day. The majority of people that responded said that they could do either.
Okay. Right. Do you all want to go ahead and set January 12th? Yeah. Thursday, January 12th for a workshop beginning at 9? Joint workshop? Does that? Okay, well, let's go ahead and get that on the agenda, Carolyn.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
And send out notifications to everyone.
Okay.
Anything else?
That's it, and I think Dave has his.
Okay.
Just wanted to give the board a brief update of where we are with Dowdy Park and the construction process. Okay, just want to go ahead and take a little visit of where we've been over the course of the past month. What I've got right here in the upper left-hand corner is a picture of one of the customized and interactive play elements. This is the chalk wall, which is under construction. And as a point of reference to the site plan, that falls right in this area right here. And I've got a little designation on that chalk wall and the perspective that this picture was taken from. Continuing on, this is looking down this main pedestrian boulevard section towards this poured-in-place dune. You can see that it's been formed up with the sub-base material. They're just getting ready to form up and pour that section of concrete sidewalk. You can see here in the background, this is the chalk wall, which is very similar to the holy wall from that previous slide. Again, another interactive play element that's been incorporated into the project design. Also, you'll see we've got a log stepping path that runs and meanders throughout the park. Here we've got some stamps. These are actual log stamps that are impressed into the concrete surface. And then we also have the wood pylons that can be used as steps that, again, follow through this park basically outside the paved surface, then through the paved surface, and then continuing on throughout the park. So those are some of the elements that have been worked on over the course of the past month. A majority of the work has taken place in this area right here and this area right here. As part of the base bid package, there was a milestone that was built into that package in order to have that playground prepped in order to take delivery of the playground equipment. The contractor has met that milestone. We anticipate to take delivery of the playground equipment next week, weather dependent. And they plan on mobilizing their crews to get in there, start installing the playground equipment, as well as some of these poured-in-place surfaces, as noted right here with this dune. We've got several other areas where we've got poured-in-place dunes. There's another one up front by the event plaza. We've got some smaller ones in the 2 to 5 playground area as well. So just want to give you a quick summary of where we've been with construction over the past months. As far as the construction schedule goes, basically this is our timeline starting back on August 1st. This green line right here represents today's date. These blue bars represent some of the individual construction activities that have occurred. You can see everything that predates this green line has been completed. You can also see that there has been construction activities that have been completed in beyond this line. So as it stands right now, we're about 30 to 45 days ahead of the project schedule. Again, all wrench can be thrown into that, all with one storm event, which we hope that we can avoid this coming weekend. So we're on track as far as the base bid work goes right now. Contractor's been working very diligently there on site, mobilizing a whole handful of individual subcontractors to get the work done. Just let you know what you can expect to see over the course of the next month. They've already started working on forming up this parking lot curb right here, and next week they will work on developing these driveway aprons out here along Bonnet Street. We've already put notification out to the school, thanks to the assistance of the police department, to let them know about this pedestrian interruption here within this corridor. Basically, the driving factor for doing that sooner rather than later is the asphalt pavement, making sure that that can be poured within an acceptable temperature range. And so if we hold off and do that into December and January, that's where it gets kind of iffy. So the contractor would try to like to fit that in the beginning of November timeframe. So that's kind of what's facilitated working and focusing in that area right now. The concrete work should be finished up in this area next week, and then they will be working within the event plaza. And then in addition to that, they will also start working on the pavilion. There was a lead time in the ordering of the glulam material or the structural supports, which they expect to take delivery here within the next week. Once that material is delivered, then they'll go ahead and start construction there within the pavilion area. So as it stands right now, basically starting from this point and working this way, all of this concrete is in. There's been a couple sections that have been skipped. That's because there's some impressions and some concrete accents that are going to go in, and so those are going to come in a little bit after the fact. But a lot of sidewalks have been poured over the course of the past several weeks, and again, with the focus being on these playground areas, making sure that those areas were prepped in advance of the installation of the playground equipment. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, David. Anybody have questions?
Great job.
Not a question, but as the board might remember, we were asked to provide someone to talk to the Cub Scouts last week. And I went in to talk about what's it like to be a commissioner in government and all this stuff, and 80% of the questions had to be on Dowdy Park. It was a great session. Everybody was excited in there about what's happening, excited to see it, and can't wait.
Everybody is excited. I'm excited just watching it come to fruition, so anyway. All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is committee reports. Go right ahead.
The only one I have to talk about, and I think the board has heard some of this already, we had the Albemarle Rural Planning Organization meeting last week that Andy and I attended. And this is part of the scoring process for projects. And neither of our bike and ped projects scored. I simply didn't. That was the one coming from Jeanette's Pier up to Gull to the Tanger, and then from the second one would be Tanger all the way to Bay Meadow, running in front of the event site. That was close, but didn't score. And there was a takeaway from all that as we continued to talk. I mean, part of the problem we thought was that our safety data was not included. And when we made the effort to get it in, once we discovered it yet again, we made the effort to get it included, and we're told that it couldn't be included because that would make our data set different than everybody else's. And so, you know, I'll leave that as it sits.
Can I add one more thing to that?
Yeah.
I have a little bit of an update. I actually talked to this person from the spot office the day after the ARPO meeting, and I sent her our crash data and asked her if she had received it. And then she said she would determine if it could still be used, and if it couldn't be used, she would recalculate our score based on that information, just so we could see what it would have been. And it's a frustrating thing, but at least we have a direct communication with those people now. So.
Well, that'd be good, but then again, we're gonna figure out how we get, if that allows for a revote. This process is so broken. Anyway, the point of it is that we are going to revisit the bike and ped plan, the old priority list. It's a good plan. Some of the priorities have been overcome by events, things that have already been finished up, and as we talked about in the retreat, we're going to go ahead and revisit it. And it was timely that Southridge came in to talk to us about that today, about the priorities, because we will be addressing the priorities on the bike and ped plan and possibly different ways to submit projects going forward, so that we'll be ready for the next budget and the next STIP process. So that will be a topic that will come back before the board and the town fairly soon. So I want to, the comments we've had from some of the neighborhoods, yes, it's being addressed.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay. Anybody else have a report?
One, CRC had a meeting a few weeks ago down in Wilmington. One of the things that is ongoing is that the legislature has mandated that every rule will expire unless it's readopted and goes through Rules Review Committee again. So staff is in the process of deciding which rules are relevant and trying to meet timelines, and that's true for every commission, not just coastal management. So all rules are being reevaluated and resubmitted for readoption. So there's a long process to go through with all the rules that have been adopted since the creation of the Coastal Area Management Act.
And when will that?
Well, so already started. We've already started. Staff has been presenting updates to the Coastal Resources Commission at every meeting, and they started with the planning rules first and got those in the pipeline and redone. And now we're starting on the ones that are much more lengthy, that are the regulatory section. So it's going to be ongoing for about the next year and a half. But everything has to be readopted.
Okay. Any comments? Thank you. Do you have anything?
Should do that, something like that for laws that are done for the legislature.
I wish the legislature had to live by its own set of rules
Right.
instead
That's
of
what I was-
passing.
that's what I was-
And in the meantime, they're also passing, as a further update, they're also passing mandates for us to do studies that you can't even do in the timeline they're created.
Because they know the answer already.
Or the answer they want.
Unfunded mandates?
Unfunded, increasingly cutting staff. So, yeah, they have a resolution in mind. It doesn't really make sense, but they have it.
Anybody have any good news to report?
I will say along that line, since you're being so, since you set the tone there, just a joke. We are in the ARPA are going back yet again and supporting a couple other ARPOs with resolutions going forward to the legislature about the rural areas, not just us, but both sides of the state, simply being not supported with either financing or even emphasis. The economic engine being the center of the state, and at the same time, the state will put a state thing will be showing them what comes out of either side of the state, and it's being ignored. Trying to get our voice back in this issue that Andy and I talked about in the STI process. So all we can do is continue to push.
Hopefully someone listens.
You got beaches, I got roads.
Well, I'm biting my tongue to make a comment.
Yeah. I think some of that philosophy is related in the advocacy goals that we just voted on, that there needs to be more
Right.
attention to the rural area. In my committee areas, there were no meetings since our last session. We do have a meeting coming up in October for the Stormwater Association of North Carolina, October 17th. The manager and I are planning to go to that.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move along from that. Manager Ogburn? Voting delegates?
Yes, ma'am. The next item is the voting delegate for the North Carolina League of Municipalities Annual Conference and Advocacy Goals Conference. This year, the leagues combined both of those conferences, so the mayor's going to attend through the duration of this conference. On Sunday, October 23rd, will be the Advocacy Conference, and then Monday and Tuesday will be the actual league conference, annual conference. So the advocacy goals that were established through a lot of work leading up to this point through committees, and they're established, and they are difficult. I think you all read them. You ranked your priorities, 1 being high, 3 being low, and I've got for you the tally of that, and it does kind of point to everything you've just said, it's hard to for the state of North Carolina to have one voice going forward through the league when there are so many differences in needs and areas to advocate for. Having said that, if the board approves and adopts a motion to name the mayor the delegate, he will take these priorities that you've ranked forward and vote on those. And he will also be prepared to vote at the business meeting on anything that may arise, the appointment of league members to leadership roles or whatever may come up through the business committee. So that's the long and short of it.
Okay, thank you. Do we want to appoint the mayor as our spokesperson to vote on the goals?
Motion to approve the mayor as the voting delegate.
Okay.
Second, since he's not here to contest it.
He's going anyway, so. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any discussion? Okay, motion carries. He will take this information and represent us well. The next item is consideration of amendment to Town Code Chapter 8, Beaches and Waterways, regarding Seagull Drive.
Yes, ma'am. Because this is in abundance of caution with the closure of Seagull that the board approved at your last meeting, what comes into question with our beach driving ordinance, Section 8, the attorney and I talked, and we felt like we needed to add an exception to the rule here so that anyone that had access to their property from Seagull couldn't have a claim that the town's prohibiting them for access because we don't allow beach driving through certain times of the year. So what the attorney and I discussed and what we put before you as language is to give an exception to those properties that were expressly mentioned in the closure of Seagull, that they have the authority to access Seagull Drive if it's considered beach for access to their house. I think we may need to make clear in this that the permission, the exception is simply for access to their property via whatever remains of Seagull Drive, just to make clear that they can't access their property from 8th Street going down the beach, that it's only accessible from the end of the maintained portion of Seagull Drive. I guess this is a sign of the times that we are being overly cautious with this because the access still is there. We haven't denied or prohibited folks from using this right away to get to their property, but we don't want to leave it even the slightest crack. So this, have I said it right, Mr. Attorney?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody have any questions or?
What I hear is that what we have in front of us may not be right.
No, it's right, but I think to tighten it up, we may.
Well, this is what I mean. We have to change the wording of what we got.
I do think that it has to be reworded to limit the driving on, quote, the beach, simply to access from the existing Seagull maintained areas to those properties, not be left open that as an exception they could drive anywhere on the beach if they want.
John, in that first line between apply to any person and owning, can we insert language there that for access, for the sole purpose of access to these properties?
Yes.
Is that a PDF?
Or you could put it at the very end of the insert before the period.
Can we get that added and bring it back? I'm not sure we can make an edit to this.
Yeah. We can bring it back to the next meeting.
Or we can do it at the end of this one.
Yeah, we could.
Well, our mayor is back, so do we want to
You're
just
stuck
have
with
that
this.
corrected and keep moving forward?
But I don't think I've heard two things say the same thing. Limiting access is one thing. How you get that access is the other. What you talked about originally is having somebody come on board at 8th Street and driving the length of the beach to get access. So it needs to say two things. The purpose is access to the property, and then define where that access is permitted from. Now, if that's within the Seagull, I mean, I think we need to, within Goosewing or something, we need to put that in there to catch both pieces.
What I would say is from, it would be adding at the very end of the addition here, adding in this phrase, from using the town's former right-of-way on Seagull Drive to access their properties. So you limit the area and the purpose.
Can add that.
Can I see the edit and then at
Yeah.
the end of the day?
I'm still not sure, with all due respect, I'm still not sure that limits them specifically. That
It says shall apply to them from using the former right-of-way of Seagull Drive. So that's all that the exception will cover.
okay, that's fine.
And then for the purpose of accessing the property.
Okay.
Repeat it.
John, will you repeat that again, and we'll get it edited and bring it back?
Yeah, the addition I would add is from using the town's former right-of-way on Seagull Drive to access their property.
We can bring it back at the end of this meeting.
So we'll address that later in the meeting then.
Okay?
Okay, this time we have the items referred to in presentation from the town attorney. You'd like a closed session?
That's correct. My only presentation would be a brief report to the board regarding that litigation matter, the Richardson Beach Nourishment Easement litigation, as well as to have the board confer with the town attorney regarding a matter within the attorney-client privilege.
Okay, do we have a motion to move to closed session this time?
So moved.
Move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We'll be back shortly. Didn't get my thumb up. You ready? Board of Commissioners back in session. Mr. Lady, would you like to report out on the closed session, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. The board did consult with the attorney regarding a matter within the attorney-client privilege and also received information regarding the Richardson litigation, but no actions were taken.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Cliff, what do you got to bring to us?
Yes, sir. The police chief and I have discussed and brought before you some considerations for amendment to Town Code Chapter 46, Vehicles for Hire. This is basically in response to when the board has heard appeals. We've made some adjustments that we think are more in line with what you've considered during that process. So the police chief can come forward and talk about some a little bit more discretion that we're asking that he be given in making these determinations.
When Cliff and I met about this, we talked about one thing that Commissioner Ratzenberger had brought up was the probation report. I just had asked for it not to be so limited just to a probation report. Why don't we look at other resources that I could use? And it could be anything from the arresting officer for an offense, the probation officer, current employers, other things to try to gauge someone's suitability for driving a taxi in our town other than just the conviction. And that's the reason why we came up with the wording that would allow us to consider the probation report, but also, you know, some other resources as well.
Any questions for Chief Brinkley? Any discussion?
Motion to adopt is presented.
Motion to adopt, second, made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Not all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. So ordered.
Thank you, sir.
Go ahead, sir.
Mayor, if we could, we'd bring back the beach driving exception. Thank you.
Right. Okay, you got it.
Carolyn and Roberta have made that edit. And again, the police chief and I have discussed this as a matter of practicality. How would this be enforced? And it would be very difficult for someone to try and use this exclusion in a way that's not consistent with this. I mean, it would be in defiance of the beach driving ordinance if police officer or someone were to pull over or notice someone without a permit in any other vicinity than this, they have the understanding of that's not permitted.
Okay, any questions? All right, do we have a motion?
Motion to adopt as amended.
There a
I'll
second?
second that.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion on the motion.
One thing, as it relates to this, Cliff, would you inform the board as to what can or cannot be done on that street per CAMA rules right now?
What CAMA has now told us is that the road, while it was public, while the right-of-way was a public right-of-way, we were able to maintain it under a general maintenance permit. It was kind of exempted because it was a public right-of-way. Cam is now, and Kelly, please correct me if I'm wrong with any of this I say, that this road is east of the static line, which means it can only be compatible fill, can't bring any non-compatible fill, can't bring in crush and run, can't bring in oyster shells, can't bring in clay. It has to, so the state that it's in now can't be improved. Mr. Foes has come in and met with Kelly, and what they've proposed and what their attorney, Charlie Aycock, that was here when we closed the street, are now contemplating is moving the easement to actually on the east side of their property. So they would be moving what's there now west of the static line, and they would be able to bring in non-compatible fill to maintain that. So that's the direction we're going. So I think to answer your question is, it's no improvements other than bringing in sand are allowed on this right of way now. Is that right, Kelly?
Thank you. Just wanted everybody to be aware of that.
Any other discussion?
We are on progress. We're going to restart our public hearing next month.
Monday.
The process starts next month.
Correct. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. There being none, it's so ordered. Okay, Board of Commissioners agenda. Let's start Marvin at your end. Do you have anything for us this month? Mayor Pro Tem Walters, you have anything for us?
Just one. I wish I'd have thought
Cahoon,
about
yes.
it last week, but I didn't realize it until Saturday occurred, which was October 1st, which is a deadline of which trash schedules change. And this year, when we went from 3 pickups on the beach route to 2 pickups, it didn't hit that effective October 1st, it would go to 1 pickup. And this is a holiday weekend. Trash got picked up on Tuesday, which means theoretically it cannot get picked up again until next Tuesday. That's a long time to go during a holiday week. Between trash pickups, that means that recycling got picked up didn't get picked up on Saturday.
Monday. We picked it up Monday of this week, but had we not done that, it would have gone from last Tuesday to after the holiday.
Right, it would have been a long time. So as we reconfigure our trash schedules for 2017, let's take into consideration not dates stuck in sand, but periods of which we are in the tourism business, that's our economy, that we look at a calendar and make those adjustments based on holidays and time periods, not just dates in sand.
And the 15th is the Seafood Festival, so that usually brings a fair amount of people into town as well.
And also,
A lot of activity in October.
It was one thing to go from 3 to 2, but going from 2 to 1 this early is creating some issues. Especially and I applaud town staff for going by and picking up, because given the weather forecast we were experiencing, it could have been a really messy.
messy weekend.
Yes, so. Well, y'all are doing a really magnificent job, and I commend you for going around, making sure stuff was empty, cleaning up the streets, because I saw people out yesterday picking up chairs from the side of the road and doing a really good job cleaning up, and I can't commend Public Works and that particular crew, Ricky and all his crew, a lot. That's all I have, Mayor.
Good,
Thank you.
Commissioner Ratzenberger, you have
No,
anything
thank
for us? We didn't have any committee reports on our agenda this month, and somehow we must have overlooked it. How about committee reports? Anybody has committee
We
reports?
did those.
We did.
We did them.
Did them? Okay. Up there, all right.
They're up
I have
there
some
under
committee
H2.
reports.
Oh, you want to give us a report?
I attended the BOEM meeting this month, just to make sure that the lease agreements they were talking about were not going to be visible from Nags Head, and they will not be the Kitty Hawk agreement. has the closest windmills in that agreement area 24 miles off of Kitty Hawk, so we should be all right there.
Could I ask you a question
And
about
I
that?
also requested that they consider tourist industry as part of their environmental impact studies.
Looking at the map, they had, the Kitty Hawk area extended all the way down off of Nags Head, though.
Yeah, the development area was a small area.
Yeah.
That's
But
north of
the
it.
area they considered was, even off of Nags
Close-
Head,
closest-
considered Kitty Hawk.
Closest area, even that tip, the closest area is 24 miles offshore.
Right, the Kitty Hawk area is this huge thing, but the development area is just that little corner up, that little slice or triangle up in the northeast section.
Northeast corner, but if
Right.
you take the whole development area,
Right.
the closest point to us is 24 miles out.
And as it seems, at least you go, some of the discussion in the papers, they may not be having many people bite at it for the reasons you would expect. It's too far offshore, there's no ports nearby, et cetera, so it may be moot anyhow.
Yeah, right. We just wanted to make sure that they included tourism and our beaches in part of the environmental study.
Thank you.
The other thing I did during the month as a private individual, not as a mayor, as the mayor, because we didn't approve it first, I went to the Dominion Power meeting in Manio and spoke against those rate increases. But I wanted to let y'all know that I did that as a private individual, not as a public official.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is, under the mayor's agenda, is the board approval to sign a letter to the president asking him not to permit offshore seismic testing. Did that better get out while I was gone?
We haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, is there a letter? You have the
It
letter?
came in an email.
You have a letter from President, letter to the president?
Came as part of an email.
Mhm.
Okay, and whether y'all saw it
Yeah,
or not.
right. She's gonna bring it up.
There's the letter, if you want.
A letter in opposition to seismic testing. They have rolled back
Oh,
the issuing of leases for petroleum,
right.
but this is for us.
I endorse it.
Okay.
I endorse that letter wholeheartedly.
I didn't want to sign that. I signed it as an individual, but I didn't want to sign it as a mayor unless we had everybody's approval.
Make a motion to allow the mayor to sign that letter on behalf of the town of Nags Head Board of Commissioners.
I second that.
Okay, any discussion on that?
Note that we've already supplied resolutions to that effect, so
We'll
this is just
supply the
reaffirming previous,
we'll supply the resolutions with it.
previous resolutions.
Might be helpful just to mention that when the president declared no offshore oil drilling, he didn't specify that you couldn't do seismic testing. So
right.
while there's not gonna be any offshore oil drilling, you can still test for it, and that's where the disconnect was. So this is just a reaffirmation of what the board, as you said, has already acted upon. Seems obvious, but not.
And there are minor content changes so that it's not XXX business, it's town of Nags Head and all
Right,
that stuff.
right, yeah, exactly. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign, there being none, and so ordered. How about other business to bring before the board today? Done? Okay, at this time, then, we'll recess until 1 PM Monday of next week. In here.